Yeah, we are recording. We can get started.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the webinar on health, body, and mind. Starts with a healthy gut, conducted by Panibabu Ghati CB Memorial Trust. This is a trust founded in the fond memory.
Zoom link blue white cannot be copied. No.
Nanda, have you muted everyone?
That got connected.
No, somebody just joined now, so that is what is happening.
Yeah,
1
we
second.
can she's watching, I saw Bala also there.
Is there a way to mute people as they're logging in?
Yeah, I think you can do it, Nanda. You can mute.
Yeah, when they join, they're by default muted.
Yeah, it's all muted now, Uttara. Sorry, can you yeah, go ahead.
Welcome to the webinar on healthy body and mind. Starts with a healthy gut, conducted by Panibabu Ghati CB Memorial Trust. This is a year-old trust founded in the fond memory of my husband, late Panibabu. The main objectives of the trust are promoting education to underprivileged children, providing aid to orphanages, old age homes, blind schools, etc., and conducting health awareness programs among various other activities. Today's webinar is about how to maintain a healthy gut for a healthy body and mind. A quick introduction to our speaker today, Mrs. Archana Anand. Ms. Archana Anand is a certified holistic health and functional medicine health coach with focus on gut health. She has been deeply passionate about lifestyle medicine for more than a decade and has successfully reversed chronic health conditions. She lives in Philadelphia with her husband and 2 kids. And Ms. Archana, we cordially welcome you to the session to educate us for a better understanding of the subject. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Malini. It is my absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you for this opportunity. And I want to also thank everyone here for being curious about gut health and wanting to take charge of their health. So I want to kind of acknowledge all of you for taking charge of your own health. Obviously, as the presentation shows, the focus of today's presentation is on gut health. And it is something that I kind of organically grew into over time because of certain health conditions in my own family and things that I was able to reverse by just focusing on gut health. So just going to get started with the slides. So just a little bit about me. So I'm, as Malini mentioned, I'm a certified holistic health coach from Institute of Integrative Nutrition. I did that in 2016. And I'm also a certified functional medicine health coach from Functional Medicine Coaching Academy, which is a part of Institute of Functional Medicine. I did that very recently, 2021, a few months back. And if you're not aware of functional medicine, it's basically, in layman's terms, it's lifestyle medicine. And it's predominantly to address chronic conditions. So just a little bit of personal details about me. I live near Philadelphia with my husband and 2 kids. I grew up in India and I came here, moved to the US about 21 years ago. And in my previous life, not so long ago, I actually was an electronics engineer and I was doing hardware design for about 17 years. But this is health, holistic health and lifestyle medicine has sort of been my passion that I decided to completely pivot my career and take this on because I think health is the ultimate wealth and I want to help people feel better, take charge of their health and do everything they can to live a vibrant life. And a little more about me. So I am a total foodie. As much as I propagate eating healthy and I also care about, actually love to eat different cuisines and I love to cook. I like to try different dishes and try to make them my own, kind of put my spin on things. And, as it says here, I love yoga. I've been practicing Bikram yoga for about 6 years now. And I've also been doing strength training. I love hiking, love having fun. So anyway, that's a little bit about me. So getting into the topic now. So what is the gut? I know it's kind of the buzzword these days, and most people probably know it as the gastrointestinal tract. And it starts from your mouth, and it basically includes all the digestive organs, the esophagus, the stomach, pancreas, liver, gallbladder, the small and large intestines, and ends at the anus. And when we talk about gut health, it's primarily how well is food digested and how are nutrients absorbed. And it predominantly depends on the diversity and the balance of the bacteria in your intestines, which is known as the large intestine, which is also known as the colon. And why is this important for overall health? And we'll get into that. But before that, some kind of interesting facts about your digestive system, if you're not aware of it. So we all know that, you know, your stomach is acidic, but it's acidic enough to burn your skin. And I know a lot of people tend to have problems with acidity, and you think that your stomach is actually too acidic, but it's kind of counterintuitive that most of the time the problem tends to be that your stomach is not acidic enough, that the food doesn't get broken down well enough in the stomach, that it starts coming back, and you think it's the acid coming back, but it's really because of improper digestion. Which is a little bit different from how conventional medicine thinks about that. And the common treatment for acidity would be like, an antacid, a proton pump inhibitor. So anyway, so don't want to get too medical in this talk. So the next is, we live in a society that is very germophobic, I should say. There is a lot of merit to sort of embracing quote unquote dirt, because we have more microbes than cells in our body. So about 100 trillion microbes. It's a combination of bacteria, viruses, and yeast. And 95% of this actually is in your intestine, predominantly your small and large intestine. And we have anywhere from 500 to 2,000 different types of microbes in that space. And the last sort of interesting fact is that 70% of our immune system is actually in the gut. So that kind of hopefully gives you an idea of why is it important to focus on your gut health. So if you know Hippocrates, who was a Greek physician, and he's kind of known as the father of medicine, this is a quote by him that all disease begins in the gut. And unfortunately, the value of this has been lost for decades, I should say, maybe even centuries, when Western medicine sort of became more mainstream, and the reach for convenience and easy fixes took precedence over what we can control. So I think the whole gut health field has sort of just been revived. And I think the microbiome, sort of even the existence of a microbiome, came about only in the 90s. And in the last couple of decades, the research has just exploded in this field. And we're still continuously learning. We barely scratched the surface of gut health, but it's like every time I go back and read, and I've been reading about this since the early 2000s, there is so much of research that keeps coming out, and that is completely surprising in some ways and not in other ways. Anyway, so why is gut health important? So we know the obvious reasons, right? Your gut is what digests your food, and it's where food is broken down and the nutrients are absorbed. And as I mentioned, 70% of your immune system comes from the gut. So to have an active and healthy immune system that can fight any kind of invaders, foreign invaders in your body, you need a healthy gut. The most obvious issues prevent any kind of GI issues as gas, bloating, acidity. And these days there is more inflammatory bowel disease kind of things, which is IBS and Crohn's. So these are sort of the obvious things, right? Most people will think, okay, if I don't eat properly, if my gut is not healthy, then I will have digestive issues. Now, what has sort of been lurking in the background and now sort of coming to the foreground is how gut impacts so many other systems in your body. One of the biggest things is autoimmune conditions, which I have noticed, and including in my own family, how it was common that all these autoimmune conditions such as rheumatoid arthritis, which is a big big one as you get older. Thyroid disorders, which is extremely common, especially among women, environmental allergies, even certain types of cancers, actually, they are all influenced by your gut. And the things that I was able to reverse in my own family, my daughter's eczema, she had a peanut allergy, which are all autoimmune conditions, any kind of where your body is attacking your own immune system. Those are all influenced by gut health. And the less common, now that is sort of research being done and more, and you can find tons of articles and papers where, about the stuff that I'm just going to talk about now, the following items, like, so blood sugar regulation, which might also be a little obvious because blood sugar predominantly comes from how your body breaks down food and glucose is metabolized. But I'm not sure how many people really thought your blood sugar can be controlled by their gut health. So the next is the big one is heart health. So, again, I think most people know the dependence of heart health on food. Cholesterol is a big one, right? So which primarily comes from the food we take. But how the cholesterol is metabolized is influenced by the gut bacteria. So in a way, your gut drives your heart health. The brain health is a big one, and this field is it's sort of fascinating, and it's there is a lot that is coming out now. There is something called the gut-brain axis, or the vagus nerve, which is the direct connection between your gut, your intestine, and your brain. And there is constant messaging going on between your brain and your gut. So if you've ever, and I'm sure most of us have gone through this, how when you are stressed, you don't feel hungry. How when you are nervous, people get this feeling of butterflies in their stomach or stomach knots, or when you're stressed sometimes, you might have constipation or diarrhea or either one of these, so which kind of tells you that your body has basically understood whatever you're feeling, that emotion as a stress, and it goes into this sort of stress response mode, also known as the fight or flight mode. So everything else in your body sort of takes a backseat. So digestion is not an important activity at that time for the body to do. So it focuses on the stress response. So we can see, and that is because the brain sends a signal to the stomach saying that we don't need to digest food because there is some kind of threatening activity going on that you need to address first. So you have adrenaline, cortisol generated, all this stuff, which may not be life-threatening per se, but your body doesn't perceive a physical threat and an emotional threat differently. The response in the body is very similar because it's how your brain has processed it. So via the gut-brain axis, there is constant communication going on between your gut and your brain. And so and a lot of the hormones, especially the hormones that your brain uses, are actually generated in your gut. So, and there is a slide I have in the end sort of talking about that, but it kind of brings to focus how the gut is so important for brain health in terms of mood. And the more research is coming out, making connection with how your gut bacteria influence your risk of Alzheimer's, dementia, and now there is autism research. Again, with just lifestyle medicine, many people have been able to reverse or at least alleviate the symptoms of autism in young kids. So this is like a exploding field, and there is a lot we are still learning about, but there is definitely it's going in the direction that the gut has a huge influence on your brain health. Healthy skin, I think most of us kind of know this. Anything you eat kind of it's manifested in your skin. If you have healthy skin, which means your body is digesting food properly, the nutrients are getting absorbed properly. The skin is your largest organ. Anything you put on your skin is absorbed and also is kind of processed by your liver and your gut. So it's extremely important to sort of focus on that. So gut also influences bone health. And basically, it is all types of inflammation. And inflammation in the body, which comes from how your gut processes food, influences bone health by controlling inflammation. So that's a big one. And hormone health. Again, when I mentioned autoimmune conditions like thyroid disorders, and even with the brain health, right, it predominantly comes from how hormones are processed in the body. So the thyroid hormones are influenced by how the gut can generate certain vitamins, and how it, there is this kind of whole concept called leaky gut right now. I'm not going to go into too much details, but how your gut, the integrity of your gut, like gut lining, which is your intestinal lining, that can get compromised if your body is exposed to the wrong things over a long period of time, and things that should not be in your blood enter your bloodstream through the gut. And so your body starts thinking that, okay, this is some new foreign object that I should be attacking. Your body is working the right way, like in the way it should, but unfortunately, the wrong things can get in your bloodstream, and that can affect your hormones. So thyroid disorders have a huge effect because of the gut. So that is something. So you can see, from the slide that how the gut sort of influences pretty much every system in your body, because food is not only energy, source of energy, it's also information for your body. So everything you eat is processed by the gut, and it's telling your body to do something. So that kind of shows why it's so important to focus on not just what you eat, and we'll again get to that, but the biggest thing is what you eat. So what are some ways to keep your gut healthy? Obvious, what you eat. So eat a very wholesome diet that is rich in a wide range of fruits and vegetables, whole grains and healthy fats. And I think, in India, at least, we are blessed to have a climate system which is very conducive to growing a wide range of fruits and vegetables. And that will definitely, I would say, embrace local vegetables. And I know there is a lot of research, and there'll be articles you'll see, and even in your stores, you'll see the broccoli and the asparagus and things that all come from the West, which are not really native to India, which is okay to have, but please always reach for something that is grown locally versus something that has traveled halfway around the world. The nutrients in vegetables reduce drastically with travel and with the cold storage and all that. So it's so much better to eat something that is local than reaching for something just because it's the next superfood, that is touted in media. And whole grains. So there can be, and what I'm recommending right now is for the average person who doesn't have any major health conditions. Like, so if you're diabetic, you might have to tweak your diet a little bit from what I am suggesting right now, just to manage your blood sugars. So eat a lot of vegetables, a lot of whole grains and healthy fats. And when I say healthy fats, I know fat has been vilified in our society by whichever industry, whatever medium over the decades. And there is definitely more awareness now about good fats. So good fats like ghee, eggs, coconut oil, unrefined oils, I would say, avocados. Those are all really great sources of fat. Meat also, to obviously the way the meat is sort of, the animal is grown and the meat is processed is important without antibiotics and hormones and all that. So, but meat also has some good fats, but I would say have that on a smaller size. Your diet should be richer in vegetables. Fruits and vegetables should be the primary source, with some grains and healthy fats. Obviously, there's also, amongst all this, protein will be taken care of, I know. So more than the macronutrients, which are the proteins, carbohydrates, fats, these things give you a lot of micronutrients, which is so much important for your gut. Micronutrients are like your vitamins, minerals. So those are the things. Some of it comes from diet, and some of it is generated in your gut. So that kind of tells you if your gut is not in good shape, your body will not be able to generate some of the vitamins that it needs, like B12 and vitamin K are generated in your gut. So if you're not eating a diet, if you're not living a lifestyle that is conducive to generating those vitamins, you can see how you can be deficient, and they have a lot of impacts. And I'm not going to go into too much of, again, like I said, like medical details. So focusing on, how our really fundamentally, and we all know this, how our ancestors used to eat. Unfortunately, the modern society has made too much of convenience foods and the influence of the Western society with pasta and pizza and all that sort of taking over our lives. And, even like the processed foods like cookies and cakes and all that, I would say limit that. So the next item, limit your intake of processed foods and sugar. So the thing about sugar is we all know sugar is bad for your blood sugar, but also some of the germs, some of your microbes in your gut love sugar, and especially the bad kind. So your gut has not only good bacteria, it also has some bad bacteria. There's tons of them that just thrive in your gut, which is perfectly fine. And that's how when one of those bacteria come into your body externally, your body is not taken by surprise because it already knows how to respond to it. And it is important for the balance to be right. So there is a balance of good and bacteria in your gut, and it's important for that balance to stay optimal. So when you eat a diet that is very rich in sugar, it feeds certain yeast, sort of the bad bacteria. So that can sort of grow out of control. And it is okay to eat sugar minimally, like, it's all about the balance. You want your diet to be rich in vegetables, your primary source, unlike rather than say rice or bread or pasta or pizza or just the foods that are easily digested and where the sugar can be easily processed. The third one is to avoid inflammatory fats. And this one is something that we have just learned, I would say, in the last couple of decades. Over time, how, at least in India, growing up, there used to be a lot of flour oil, canola oil, sunflower oil, refined oils, because they were touted to be better. Again, there was this lot of sort of vilification of fat in general, and how we are saying that this kind of fat is better than the conventional fats that our ancestors used, like ghee and coconut oil and mustard oil and all that. So there was this industrial oil, I would say. The refined oils are more of the industrial oils. And those are very inflammatory in the body because they distort the balance of omega-3 versus omega-6. And you need more omega-3 in your body, which is good for your brain health, and just cholesterol and all that. And these feed oils sort of distort that balance because they're higher in omega-6. So you want to use, and they're cheap. So when you eat out, most of the time, these are the kind of the oils that are used in cooking, so in making those foods. So you have no control over that. The only thing you have control over is what you use in your own house. So please reach for the healthier oils. And I'm not saying stop eating out, but if you do that as minimally, the oils that you get from those meals will not disturb your gut balance. So the next big one is probiotic foods, including some amount of probiotic foods. Now, the big one we all know in India at least is yogurt, buttermilk. So those are big ones. And I do have, in my next slide, I will be talking about what are some of the other probiotic foods you can try to incorporate. And you don't need a lot of these, but a little bit on a regular interval will certainly help a lot. So, and if you have young kids who don't like yogurt, don't like certain kind of probiotics, there is a variety of things you can try. So I would strongly urge you to make that part of your life, having some kind of probiotic foods every day or a few times a week. So these are the obvious things, right? What we eat impacts the gut health. Now, some of the next two items are sort of the not so obvious factors that impact your gut health. So the big one is stress management And this kind of goes back to how I talked about the gut-brain connection and how when your body perceives stress, it puts digestion in the background and it's not going to focus on that. So it is so important to practice stress management, anything. And I'm not saying do meditation every day. For stress management can be different for different people. Just going out for a walk, being in nature, doing gardening, reading a book, anything, but just please focus on taking time for yourself, whatever it might be, praying. There is a whole list of things, and there is no right or wrong kind of stress management. It is whatever helps your body relax. And another big one, it's getting some kind of physical activity and good sleep. So, at the end of the day, this is the whole concept of lifestyle medicine, right? And you can see how everything that is part of our life, sleep, moving your body, eating, and stress, everything impacts your gut, and at the end of the day, impacts your overall health. So getting some kind of activity, at least 20 to 30 minutes of walk or some kind of moderate intensity by age, whatever you're comfortable with, climbing, taking the stairs instead of taking the elevator, just doing some kind of body weight exercise, Surya Namaskar, just like 10 sets of Surya Namaskar regularly. And, you can do, if you're up for it, if this is something that you would enjoy, some kind of strength training. And I very, very strongly advocate this, especially for women as they get older, to prevent osteoporosis and bone density loss. It is so important to move your muscles, sort of move weight against gravity in some way. And this is not to say that start lifting 10, 20 kilos tomorrow, but please start small and do something, and this is prevention, unfortunately, is not a big or sort of very attractive term in society right now. People want to reach for solutions when you have a problem. But we, like the sort of the old phrase goes, prevention is better than cure. But the way our life is, nobody thinks about problems when everything is going well, right? I mean, how do you prevent problems? That is sort of the least of our priorities. But you just doing some very simple things, making that part of your life will go such a long way in preventing problems. And if you make it a habit, by doing just simple things, you don't have to worry about it when there is a problem. It will be easier to make changes. The problem that I've seen is when people have lived a certain life and suddenly the doctor says, stop eating this. Now, how do I make that change when I've eaten something all my life? Or now suddenly you're asking me to do something that I've never done in my life, right? So, and change is hard as humans. We are all creatures of comfort. So it's important to just take like small steps every day or a few times a week to the best of your ability. And there is no right and wrong. Everybody is different. We have very unique bodies. We all have the same organs, but how the body interacts, how the organs interact are very unique to us. Our microbiome is as unique as your fingerprint because it's influenced by right from your birth, all the way to your environment right now, how your stress, everything. So no two people's microbiome, if they get tested, will be the same. So that kind of tells you how unique you are. So whatever works for you, and that's the sort of the big takeaway. Moving on. So, I talked about incorporating probiotics and why are probiotics important and what are they? So probiotics are basically the good bacteria that help keep you healthy. And like I said, your microbiome, which is the bacteria in your gut, and 95% of the bacteria are in your gut. You have bacteria on your skin, you have bacteria in your mouth, you have bacteria in your lungs, but 95% of the bacteria which impact your health are in your gut. So, and probiotics are the good bacteria. And like I said earlier, there's good and bad bacteria in your gut, and it's important to keep the balance. And probiotics are sort of the foods that provide the good bacteria. So why do we need them? Like I talked about, it helps maintain the balance of bacteria in the body, in your gut. It helps digest the food and absorb the nutrients. A lot of and some of, like I mentioned earlier, it also helps create some of the vitamins in the intestines, and support the overall immune system and control inflammation. So most of these chronic conditions, like I mentioned, the ones that I mentioned earlier, the autoimmune conditions, or even things like migraines, arthritis, the bone, everything is sort of indicative of a systemic inflammation. And inflammation also has this term that is sort of has a bad rap now, because as soon as people hear the word inflammation, they get scared. But inflammation is also very important for your body. That's how it fights anything that comes in externally. And the biggest problem is inflammation over a long period of time. So inflammation, so when just to give you an example, when your body is attacked by a virus, your body senses a foreign object and there is inflammation. And the inflammation can show up as fever, cold, whatever the symptoms are, right? That's a sign of your body being in inflammation. It's trying to fight that virus. So what happens is, okay, it creates antibodies, it takes them to it fights the bacteria or the virus, and then the inflammation goes down. So your body sort of goes back into its normal mode and everything goes back to normal. Your digestion is normal, everything is normal. Now, the problem with systemic sort of chronic inflammation is when it is in this inflammatory mode over a long period of time. And this happens because of various things. Like I said, eating the wrong things could be a big one, or exposure to certain chemicals. There are many different causes for it. But when your body perceives something as danger and it's an inflammation, and it's an inflammation mode for a long period of time, it's unable to do the activities that it should do when you're healthy. And that chronic inflammation causes problems in your blood, in your bones, for your heart, like I said, like in your brain, everywhere. And how it shows up in your body is very unique. So for somebody, stress can manifest as has headaches, but for somebody else, stress can sort of show up as a skin condition, like a problem with your skin, like eczema or psoriasis. That is why it's so important to focus on everything, because you don't know what is affecting you. So it could be, and just because somebody's migraine was affected by stress and somebody did not get a headache, doesn't mean they're not stressed. The body will determine how it responds to stress and where it shows up in the body. So that is why it is important to get probiotics, because they help you sort of with just keeping your overall good bacteria in better control of your body. So what are some of the probiotic foods? Like I mentioned earlier, the most obvious ones are yogurt and buttermilk. Now, raw milk, which is, I don't think it's very common in India. I mean, as in raw milk is common, but because of the milking conditions, they're not, we tend to use them after boiling them. But raw milk is a great source of probiotics if you're able to consume it without boiling it, because obviously boiling will kill a lot of the good balance of bacteria in the milk itself. But if you're able to have it, raw milk is a great source. Of course, yogurt and buttermilk, it's part of our society, so that's the obvious ones. And the next two things are sort of influenced by the Western society, kombucha and kefir. Kombucha is basically a fermented tea. It's a black tea without milk. So it's pure black tea that is fermented with something called a SCOBY, which is basically a culture, like how we put yogurt, how we have yogurt has cultures. This is a culture of bacteria and yeast, sort of the good kind that you use to ferment the tea, and you can for about a week, and then you can consume that. So that provides a lot of good bacteria and yeast for your gut. Kefir is another one. And it can be water kefir, where you just, you take sugar water. So, and then you again add this culture, it will ferment. As it ferments, it consumes the sugar and it generates sort of feeds the good bacteria, right? So the bacteria need food, and that's what the sugar provides. So even in the tea, it's sweetened black tea. So sugar is, like I told you earlier, Sugar is food for many of the microbes, and it is good. It's because it's glucose. It's important. Sugar, I know it's a sort of, again, it's sort of gotten this bad term, but sugar kind of provides energy for our body, for microbes, for many other things. So there are different types of kefir. Apple cider vinegar, that is another one. You could just have a spoon of it in warm water, in a cup of warm water, and have that. That provides some probiotics. So those are sort of the ready-made things. And then there is the more common things that are in India, like the fermented foods like idli and dosa, the pickles, the salt-based pickles that our moms and grandmothers used to make. Those are great source of probiotics. There's more cultured vegetables that are, again, sort of maybe the influence of the West, like kimchi, sauerkraut. Those are all like cultured vegetables. Again, great source of probiotics. So I have two more items now here, which are very traditional to India. The day-old cooked rice with salt and buttermilk, very commonly consumed in the South. And this is another one that I learned about a few years back. It's a Punjabi drink also called kanji, which is made with black carrots and salt and mustard powder, and it's fermented for a week. So that generates. So salt is a kind of, it creates certain probiotics or sugar. So they're both, and the kind of bacteria that they generate will be different, and they're both good. So, that's why it's important to have the diversity. It's because each bacteria has a certain function, and it helps with certain synthesis in the body, certain kind of metabolism. So these are all common foods in India that you can incorporate in your life at some frequency, few times a week, once a week. And I know, see, the thing is, fundamentally, it's all about doing the work at home. But I know it's for many of us, we all lead very busy lifestyles with kids and jobs and everything else. But just taking a little bit of time, and I do some of these, and it doesn't take a lot of time. The only thing it needs is a little bit of planning. So, and the things that we truly care about, we always make time for it. So in the interest of the health of, my own health and my family's health, I'm very determined to do certain things. And so I always make time for this. So I would suggest, and I'm not saying do everything, pick one thing that you think your family will like and incorporate that. So the next topic is prebiotics. And I don't know how many people here are familiar with that, but prebiotics are basically the food for your good bacteria. And like I said, your bacteria take either sugar and other kind of food. This is the prebiotic, the indigestible fiber that some of the bacteria in your gut really love, and that is the food they need to even thrive in your gut. And if you don't get enough probiotics, they will die. So there will be the imbalance of the gut bacteria. So we all know that you need to eat a fiber-rich diet for bowel movement, right? So that's very obvious. But I'm not sure if many of us knew that those fibers are actually, how do those fibers help with gut, the bowel movement is they get fermented in your gut because they're indigestible. So they go to your gut, they pass through your digestive system, go to your large intestine, and they're not digested. They actually ferment there. And as they are fermented by the bacteria, so the bacteria consume some part of this fiber and they ferment it and they generate some good nutrients for your body and pass along the rest of it to be expelled from your body. So why do we need them? It helps regulate your blood sugar because they slow down absorption. And that is why there is more focus on whole grains rather than polished grains like white rice. And not to say that white rice is bad, but white rice is devoid. If your diet is very rich in processed grains like white rice or white flour, you are going to lose out on the fiber. Obviously, that could show up as constipation, but also it's going to make it worse by creating an imbalance of the bacteria in your gut. So it is important to have a lot of fiber in your diet. So it helps with blood sugar and it helps with your digestion and again, nutrient creation and absorption. Now, what are the prebiotics foods that we can consume? I have a kind of a simple list here that I've tried to pick out the ones that are very characteristic. Sort of almost all vegetables have some fiber, other than maybe say potato. But there are some that are richer in probiotics and a different kind of probiotic chemicals, and some are richer than others. But as you can see, the very commonly used ones, like plantain is a big one in India, which is not very common in the West, but it's a big one. So plantain is a very good source of probiotic. Sweet potato, beetroot. Asparagus is definitely more common in the West, so I wouldn't make a big deal of it, like try to go find asparagus and have that, or broccoli for that matter, although maybe in some parts of India, they are growing broccoli now. But I would say whatever is local. So onions, garlic, beetroot, all big ones, right? Ginger, we all know that ginger is great for digestion. But again, I'm not sure if you knew that the ginger is, how is it good for your digestion? Because it helps your gut bacteria. And I have the list of fruits, again, the grains and legumes, and these are all quite common. Quinoa and wild rice, maybe not as common in India. So you don't have to go out of your way to make make that a part of your diet. But, just have brown rice. In Kerala, they use something called red rice, anything that's parboiled. And not to say give up your white rice, but if you have trouble giving up your white rice, try to incorporate other things that will help with it. So like any kind of beans, right? Whole beans with the skin. So anything with the skin will help with that. And of course, oats is there, whether it's rolled oats, not the cooking kind, but like the rolled oats or the steel cut oats. And nuts and seeds, the big ones. So most of the nuts, other than maybe cashews, have some amount of probiotic, but almonds, pecans, and pistachios are really rich in them. About 10% of them is actually a prebiotic. And flaxseed, again, I wouldn't say go out and look for chia seed or hemp seed, but whatever you are able to find, you don't have to burn your pockets to eat a healthy meal. Fortunately, like I said, India grows a lot of these, so you are able to go to a good farmer's market and get many of these things. And embrace the things that are local, embrace the good kind of fat. I know that is a big one that I can still, when I talk to people, they're so afraid of having ghee, having certain good fats and nuts, for example. A handful of nuts, it's so good for you. And, you're better off eating something like nuts for a snack rather than reaching for that biscuit or rusk, which are very common things that I hear. And those are all extremely processed. It's not made in somebody's house. It's not made by nature. It's made in a factory. Your health is not their biggest concern. We have to take control of our health as much as it's all touted, and you'll see these big fancy terms on the packets, but that's not their primary concern. So we have to understand what our body likes, and it could be different even within a whole family. One person in the family might be sensitive to something and somebody else might not. So that kind of tells you might have the same genes, but how your system can be so different. And this is something that was fascinating when I read that even amongst twins, their microbiomes are very, very different. So the other thing is, it's so important to maintain a healthy weight, because it's sort of like this positive feedback. Once you get off that range, things sort of work against you rather than for you. It's the inertia is against you in bringing yourself back to that equilibrium. So there is research that shows that if you are overweight, your gut bacteria are actually lacking in diversity. So it's more effort to bring that back in balance and bring your weight down. So when you're trying to focus on bringing your weight down and you sort of start fasting and not eating the right kind of stuff, you're making the condition possibly worse for yourself, and you may not be able to lose the weight. Or you could be creating other problems later on down the road too. So it's not like, okay, it's just this way or that way. It's so unique as your DNA. Okay, so this was the other one when I talked about the gut-brain connection. I said how many hormones are generated. So 95% of serotonin, which is the most important mood regulating hormone, is actually produced in your stomach. So if you are someone, or someone who has depression or anxiety, these are all, it's determined by the hormones that are generated in your body, and serotonin is a big one. So they might want to focus on what they're eating. And you can see how the body is such a holistic system, and treating one problem isolated is not the best way. You might be, again, like, hitting a wall in terms of not having improvements and things like that. So that was the sort of the last slide that I had. So thank you again for your interest and listening to this. And if you have any questions, I have my details here. We'll of course have the Q&A right now, but if you want to reach out to me privately, I've shared my details here. So thanks again.
Thank you so much,
I'm going to
Archana.
stop
That
the
was
video.
very informative.
Oh, sorry.
That was very informative.
Okay.
So I would encourage everybody who has questions to please unmute yourself and ask your questions.
Hi, Archana.
Hi, Naga.
This is Naga, yeah.
Yeah. Hi.
So, yeah, I really liked the talk. It was very informative. One question that I have is, I read a lot about people asking us to keep, even my mom says, keep using oils in rotation. I'm talking about healthy oils, yes, nut-based oil, like, groundnut oil, coconut oil, ghee,
Sure.
mustard oil, sesame oil. All this is fine, but then I keep hearing that, don't keep using the same, like don't keep using groundnut oil all the time or coconut oil all the time, or just ghee for all your cooking, but just keep making certain dishes with each of them. And that's very important for your health. I just wanted to understand, is it true, and why is it so? And yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, sure. I would say, I don't know the whole science behind that. I'm not that qualified to answer that question scientifically, but there is a lot of value to conventional wisdom. We ate oils based on seasons. Like in the north, they used sesame oil because that was a warming oil. So there was a lot of value to having consuming foods based on seasons, and but based on certain dishes. Like for certain dishes, I know in the South, for certain dishes, they use sesame oil. For other things, they use coconut oil because it was also locally available. Personally, I have 3 to 4 different kinds of fats that I use in regular rotation, sort of a different, like you mentioned, for different dishes or different kinds of cuisines that I make. I use different oils, so you get a variety, and there is a lot of merit to that because the nutrient profile of each oil is a little bit different. So there is pardon me if some of it is going to, at least for some of you may not understand this completely, but the proportion of saturated fat versus unsaturated fat in a given oil can be different. And even within the unsaturated fat, there is monounsaturated and polyunsaturated, and both have different benefits with respect to primarily your cholesterol metabolism. There is how one affects HDL, one will affect LDL, or one will affect triglycerides. So it's good to have a balance in that respect too. So you get different proportions of mono and unsaturated, and so that way you're getting exposed to different things. So basically, it's all about diversity, right? And within the health sort of paradigm, healthy food paradigm, there is different things that are healthy, and I would say expose yourself to as much as you can. So the problem is when you eat the same thing day after day, and you are sort of feeding the same thing to your bacteria. So over time, the diversity will change. So follow what your mom's saying, and rotate your oils. That is perfectly fine. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, it did. So just one small follow-up. What about rice bran oil? Is that also good? I have not yet started using it.
I would say minimally use it. Rice bran oil, again, I would say it's a very processed oil. There are better oils. Let me put it that way. So I'm not going to say stop using it. If for certain dishes you absolutely want to use that, you can have it, but minimize there are better oils in terms of nutrient profile. So rice bran oil, I think it's an industrial oil. It was not there before. Go back to maybe the conventional oils, some of which, we all use all the time.
Yeah, thanks, Archana.
Sure.
So I do have one question. So as you mentioned that the gut has the variety of bacteria. So is there something that we can constantly do to improve or change the gut bacteria by itself? Like what are the concrete steps that we can take to change the composition of a gut bacteria? Or is it even possible to change gut bacteria itself? The type
Oh,
of
absolutely. It's absolutely possible. It's absolutely possible. And like I said, everything we eat has bacteria, right? The food we eat has bacteria, especially when you have something raw. You know, this even you could wash things like vegetables and fruits, but you're still consuming some bacteria, and you're exposed to bacteria from your skin. You can take probiotic supplements that will introduce like high doses of bacteria. The only thing I don't recommend supplements for the average healthy person, because there's a lot you can take from just food. And when I talked about the probiotic foods, like having yogurt and kimchi, so the more variety you have, the more variety of bacteria you will get in your body. So instead of just eating yogurt, I know in India, yogurt and buttermilk is big, but that has only one set of bacteria. If you eat different things, you're taking different bacteria. And again, the prebiotics will feed different bacteria, and different bacteria will grow. So that's why it is so unique. Every person is so unique with the bacteria, also your microbiome per se. So yeah, probiotics, just getting back to the supplement. So if somebody wants to really at least temporarily improve something, probiotic supplements are great. But you know, I read this somewhere and I thought it was fascinating that most probiotic supplements, if you see, they'll have some billions of units of bacteria in them, like one capsule, you know. So and apparently a spoon of cultured vegetables has like 10 trillion bacteria. So you can see how much food has versus a supplement has. So you would have to take like an entire bottle to get something that you can get from food. Does that make sense? So you know, you'll be spending so much more too. So yeah, so that's why it is. And the other thing with the supplement is, like I said, in the sort of the beginning of my talk, your stomach is a very strong acid. So supplements, not everything that you take might even get to your intestine. It has to go through the strong acidic environment. When you take it as food, it is encapsulated the right way that will pass through your system and get to the right place. It's able to. So you're just so much better off taking something from food versus you know, taking a supplement. Although there is value to that too. So I'm not going to completely discount that. But the first choice should always be food. And that is for your pocketbook too.
All right, cool. Thank you, Archana. I see Sindhu has raised her hand. Sindhu, do you have a question? Sorry.
Yeah. Yes, I do have a question. Oil versus ghee versus butter. Which one is better? For cooking.
What kind of oil are we talking about? So that's the big thing, right? You can say there are a lot of different oils now. If you go to the market.
Yeah.
So certain oils have certain, like I mentioned earlier, the nutrient profiles are different. So I would say butter burns very easily. So for cooking, I would say butter is probably, and it's also a saturated fat. So I would say use that minimally. Ghee is pretty good. It has a higher smoking point. So you always want to avoid that, right? I mean, if you burn something, it creates carcinogens. It's not good. It oxidizes things. So it's not good for your body. So when you're using anything for cooking, you want to use something that can tolerate the heat. And so that's why, you know, like people heard that extra virgin olive oil is really good. So they start using that. But extra virgin olive oil has one of the lowest smoking points. So it's more of a finishing oil rather than a cooking oil. Once you heat extra virgin olive oil, it loses all its benefits. In fact, it becomes harmful. So you're not helping yourself then. So it's kind of important to understand that every fat has its profile and a different kind of use. So in some ways, it's nice to have a variety. So I would say extra virgin olive oil if you love salads, kind of raw foods, if you want to eat something like that. And it also has a strong taste, which will not go with dishes. Again, a subjective thing, you know, some people won't mind that, but if you're trying to make a very traditional Indian dish and you put extra virgin olive oil on top of it, it may not go well. So that has a different use versus for normal Indian cooking, I would say use coconut oil or sesame oil or ghee, you know, like mustard oil. There are different things for different uses for different oils. So I would say have a variety, but definitely stay away from refined oils like peanut oil, safflower, sunflower, all the margarine, that kind of dalda, whatever. I'm not sure what the latest margarine type thing is in India, but yeah. Did that answer
Thank
your
you.
question, Sindhu?
Yes, it did.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Yeah.
I see Soumya raised her hand. We'll probably take a couple of more questions and then we can wrap it up.
Hi, Archana. Soumya here.
Sure. Hi, Soumya.
Yeah, hi. My question is now, they say fasting is also important in our diet. Like once in a while, we need to fast. Now, how does it actually affect our gut system? Is that beneficial?
Absolutely. And I'm not going to say that everybody should fast. We naturally fast when we sleep, right? If you finish your dinner early enough and you eat a breakfast and that is the time your body gets rest. And a lot of the healing actually happens when you're fasting, because digestion is a very energy intensive process, and it is actually kind of a stress on your body too. Digestion is a form of stress, good kind of stress, but nevertheless stress. So fasting is definitely great. And I would say if you're able to, make it a part of your life, but it's not absolutely necessity. But having good breaks within your meals is definitely great. The constant snacking that we have, sort of this, it's somewhat propagated that eat, regularly. I'm not sure that's really necessary. Again, there is no good or bad, because each person may respond to these things differently. So I would say try things out and see how it works for yourself. If you're a normal healthy person, again, I'm talking for the average normal healthy person. If you have any kind of condition, please don't take whatever I'm saying to a T and follow that. Everybody is unique, so your situation might be unique. But for an average healthy person without any chronic condition like diabetes or blood pressure or any other kind of condition, fasting is good. It definitely helps your microbiome because it rests things, and resting is when healing happens. So overall for your body itself, it's good. When you eat the right kind. When you don't want to eat, just listen to your body. I think there is so much value to listening to your body. We think that we don't know our bodies enough, that the doctor knows more than us. But at the end of the day, we are experts of our body. So just eating the foods that is right for your system. And it's very simple. When you start feeling different, your skin starts showing something, your body is telling you something. It's not some isolated problem. It's fundamentally related to if you're stressed. Like somebody came to me recently and said that she never had eczema in her life. And she had some very stressful thing with her daughter, and she started getting eczema in her feet. So, and she said, I'm not eating anything differently. I've eaten like this my whole life, and at least for the last couple of decades, and suddenly I have eczema. And it was actually triggered by her stress. So how your body perceives something and responds to something is so unique. Somebody might just get headaches, or, like they might get moody, or like I said, everybody responds differently, and your body might show things differently. So cut a long story short, I've already talked a lot about this, but fasting, if you feel like it, do it. If you're able to do it, please do it. It's definitely good.
Yeah, thanks.
I think we'll probably take one more question and then we can wrap it up. I believe Mr. Keshav had a question, so please unmute yourself.
Hi, Chitti. This is me, Keshav. So I'll just to let you know, this was a very good presentation. I enjoyed it. So yeah, I have a question related to my food intake and my exercises. So
Okay.
I do a lot of strength-based exercises, a lot of muscle building and a lot of muscular endurance. So before my workout, I tend to have like a lot of protein intake, a maximum of 20 to 30 grams of protein at least. And I have like a variety of foods. Like for example, I have eggs. I at least have 2 eggs, a banana,
Okay.
and milk before at least an hour and a half before my workout.
Okay.
The only question I had is like, is there a limit as to how much eggs I can have in a day? Especially if I'm a 15-year-old, I don't know how much eggs I can have in a day. I plan to have at least 2 to 3 or 3 to 4 eggs a day, but I just feel I should have two. So I wanted to ask, get an opinion from your side if there's, a limit.
Well, first of all, let me say it is so amazing that you're so conscious of your health. You're taking control of your health. You're doing so much and you want to do it right. So let me applaud that, Keshav.
Thank you.
I didn't even realize first this is which Keshav this was, but when you call me Chitti, now I know which Keshav that is. But anyway, so I would say, eggs are a great source of protein, especially as vegetarians if you're able to eat it. And they're an excellent source of good fat. And I know the yolk of the egg is sort of vilified and they say it increases your cholesterol, but it has so many good nutrients and it's such a shame if you have to throw the yolk away. I would say definitely eat the whole egg if you like the taste and you haven't been throwing it away. But I would say 3 to 4 eggs for if you're a healthy person is absolutely fine in a day, especially as a source of protein and fat. And it'll also help keep your sugar under control, just keep it more balanced. It'll help you keep fuller longer. It's, yeah. And 2 to 3 eggs, absolutely, for sure. I would say even 3 to 4 is fine. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Chitti. I just have one last question.
Sure, go ahead.
It's based on the protein powders that have been going on around, there's something that I wondered, I wish I can take a few supplementaries for my workout, whey protein, which is for muscle building. Is it okay for me to have, would it have some side effects to my, health, or just like an opinion? So before I could.
No, it's hard for me to comment on an individual, individual's health without knowing too much, but I'm just going to assume that everything is otherwise normal. The only thing I would say is also don't rely on just one source of protein. So if you start taking whey, don't just rely on whey for protein. So some people might just have 2 scoops of whey and then not much else. So it's just, again, having a variety. So have eggs, and having 1 scoop of whey a day is perfectly fine, especially because your body is also, you're doing muscle building. And I know protein is also somewhat, I think there's a little bit of over exaggeration with the amount of protein people need. For an average person, you don't need a whole lot of protein. I mean, you need protein for sure, but I think it's somewhat exaggerated. But if you're doing bodybuilding and you're trying to do something with your body, like put on muscle, you definitely need more protein, and getting it from a variety of sources, especially as vegetarians, I know it can be hard. So whey protein is absolutely fine. 1 scoop a day. Just make sure you read the label, the ingredients list, and make sure it doesn't have any other sort of ingredients that could be problematic. Somebody I know recently had a bad reaction to a protein powder. So there is a lot of protein powder in the market. So it's important to sort of look at the label and just understand the ingredients. That is another thing I really propagate. Please read labels, and if there is ingredients that you don't understand, we have this great tool called the internet. Look it up, try to find something, just don't go blindly follow labels and buy stuff. So that is one takeaway if you want from this session. So please start reading labels.
Yes. Thank you so much. It's really informative.
You're welcome, Shri Keshav.
Yes.
All right. So, okay. I guess we'll just take one last question. I see Naga's hand up again. So we'll probably wrap up with that.
Sure.
Yeah. Thanks. This is a question that I have based on the experience I'm seeing in a close friend of mine. So people with chronic bronchitis, I would say, after your talk, I made this connection, could also be a result of an imbalance. Probably by improving the gut health, maybe chronic bronchitis can be improved. The condition can be improved. Am
Absolutely.
I right?
I think so. There is a lot of merit to that. Yeah.
But the problem that I'm seeing is these people who have these issues of very, very commonly falling sick with cold and breathing issues, the doctors advise them to completely avoid curd. So I know this person, friend of mine, does not take any curd, does not take any dairy products. And I'm assuming that because all of these are chilling foods, right? They're cold prone foods. So does not take this more korambu, which we make with curd.
Okay, yeah.
Any
Understand, yeah.
curd-based dishes are avoided, which I'm assuming that all your fermented food is also cold prone, right? Like what they say, it causes chill. I'm assuming that would be the case. So all of these things are avoided, which means that they hardly get any probiotics in their diet.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Any merit? I mean, it seems very ironical to me.
So I think there is some, sorry to interrupt, Naga, but what I was thinking is dairy is a very problematic food for some people. So I think that has some, and I know Ayurveda also kind of talks about depending on your body composition, right? They'll say that certain foods are better for your constitution than others. In some ways, dairy it's an inflammatory food, especially industrial dairy, as in when the cows are or non-organic milk, or now there is this whole A2 milk. So what's in your milk, right, can be inflammatory for your body. So avoiding milk, it's one of the biggest. In functional medicine, there is a kind of thing we follow called elimination diet. So there are the big triggers in your body, and dairy is a big one. So and unfortunately, in the Indian diet, dairy is huge, right? We have so many forms of dairy. But for bronchitis especially, there could be a sensitivity to dairy, and that is whether the doctor knows about it or not. That's probably why they say avoid dairy products. But in terms of fermented foods itself, right? Yes, yogurt and buttermilk are dairy based, but there are other things like lacto-fermented vegetables, like that Punjabi drink that I talked about, right? It's fermented carrots with mustard. Those are all also fermented foods, but they're not dairy based. So those might be better suited for somebody with, there's something worth trying. Or they could just try a supplement, at least until they get better, right? Just try a probiotic supplement, a high dose probiotic supplement, and see if that helps. Does that answer your question?
I think I think that's a very good idea, probiotic supplement, because that would be like, they're not going to be afraid that they would catch a chill. I mean, because most of these foods, right, they're always saying that it's cold prone. So they completely avoid it over years. And today it struck me that maybe that is the reason why this thing has surfaced now.
Yeah, there's a lot of value to that, there's a lot of value to probiotic supplements, for especially somebody with some kind of condition and they're trying to get better and that situation for sure. Yeah, but for average healthy person, you don't need the supplement because they're expensive also. So being healthy shouldn't be very expensive. It should be affordable, that anybody should be able to do it.
Yeah, thanks.
Welcome, Nara.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much, Archana, for imparting such insightful knowledge about holistic functional medicine and giving insights about it. There were a lot of things that I had taken for granted that I did learn by you listening to you talk about it. So thank you so much. I hope everybody else enjoyed your presentation as much as I did and gained knowledge as much as I did. And thanks everyone for taking time out at attending this and trying to invest in yourself and making your health better. So
yes, that is priceless. That is invaluable. Yeah, thanks, Yoga. And I'm as you know, I'm very passionate about this particular field, of gut health, because it has so much power, and it's my hope is to impart and share as much as I can and help people take charge of their health. So thanks for this opportunity. And thanks to everyone else for taking, like Yoga said, taking the time out. And
thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.